right, welcome everyone. We're called to order at 5 o'clock on the dot. We'll go ahead and we'll start out with a moment of silence. Item B. Commissioner Smith? Thank you, sir. Before we move on, I've got a couple real brief matters I was hoping we could address on the front end. H1 and H2. I'll just read the items, at least the subject title line, into the record so we can hopefully get a motion and get these folks on their merry way. H1 is a petition to vacate public utility and drainage easement, 200 CADIZ Court, Villa de Palmas, Unit Number 4, Plat Book 25, page 120, Merritt Island, Jared F. and Suzanne H. Mayer, and that's in my district, E2. And the other is H2, petition to vacate a public maintenance and utility easement, 1040 New Hampton Way, Catalina Isle Estates, Unit 6, Plat Book 20, page 119, Merritt Island, Manny and Michelle Canha, Canha, also in D2. Could I have a motion to approve both of those, please?
Do you have any cards?
Oh, no, we do not. Thank you, Ms. Bentley. We do not have any cards as to H1 or H2. So we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Pritchett. I'll go ahead and second that. And I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, H1 and H2 pass unanimously. All right. We'll go back to item D, as in Delta, minutes for approval. We have two sets, the July 9th zoning meeting and the July 30th special meeting, both from this year. May I have a motion as to both of them? All right, I have a motion to approve both of them by Commissioner Pritchett. I'll second that motion. All in favor of approval of both the July 9th and the July 30th, 2020 meeting minutes, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, Commissioner Tabaya, we have your item next, E1.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I don't do many resolutions, but I think this one is kind of important. Resolution honoring the late Vincent Grimaldi, founder of Grimaldi Candy Company. Whereas Vincent Grimaldi passed away on Saturday, September 12, 2020, at the age of 87, and whereas he is survived by his three children, Carolyn, Frank, and Vinny, as well as three grandchildren and 7 great-grandchildren, and whereas he was a 10th-generation Italian confectioner from Italy, and whereas Vincent Grimaldi moved to Brevard County with his wife, Anella, in 1970, and whereas they opened their first candy shop off the O'Galley Boulevard, with Vincent soon being referred to as Melbourne's Candy Man, and whereas Vincent invented the idea for the beloved chocolate-covered potato chip while brainstorming in the grocery store, and whereas his legacy will be passed on for generations to come, now therefore be resolved that Vincent Grimaldi will always be fondly remembered and celebrated in Brevard County, done, ordered, and adopted in this regular session the 10th day of November 2020. A motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
I'll second that motion, Commissioner Tabaya. Go ahead and call the question. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's wonderful that Mr. Grimaldi left a legacy that when you mention Grimaldi, you automatically know chocolate-covered potato chips. And what a cool legacy to leave. Sort of like Disney, right? We don't remember the man, but we remember the legacy that they leave. And it puts a smile on my face every time. Thank you guys very much. We feel you're lost, but he will be remembered for decades to come.
Thank you all. If you want to say anything, but you're welcome to, but by no means do you have to. Anyone feel so inclined? I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. I'll leave this. Thank you so much.
Commissioner Smith, I can't recall if this was one that we were talking about potentially moving to consent, or if this was, okay. So we'll go ahead, and with respect to E as in Echo 3, we'll address that along with consent unless someone has an objection. I do have a card for item F13, so the 13th item from consent. So,
Commissioner,
sir.
E3 is here.
Oh, hang on a second. One moment.
E2 is the one that we were going to.
Hang on. I'm trying to make sure I have your mic here. Okay, you're good now.
Okay. Yeah, E3 is here.
Okay, if you want to address it now, sir.
Yes. Do we have folks here for E3? You can stand at the podium, and I'll finish reading this, and then you can speak. Thank you for being here. Whereas American Indians and Alaska Natives were the original inhabitants of the land now constituting the United States, and whereas American Indians and Alaska Natives have traditionally exhibited a respect for the finiteness of natural resources through a reverence for the earth, and whereas American Indians and Alaska Natives have served with valor in all of America's wars, beginning with the Revolutionary War through conflict in the Persian Gulf, and whereas American Indians and Alaska Natives deserve to be recognized for their individual contributions to the United States as local and national leaders, artists, athletes, and scholars. And whereas this recognition will encourage self-esteem, pride, and self-awareness in American Indians and Alaska Natives of all ages. And whereas November is a time when many Americans commemorate a special time in the history of the United States, when American Indians and English settlers celebrated the bounty of their harvest and promise of new kinships. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, does hereby recognize the month of November 2020 as Native American Heritage Month, done, ordered, and adopted in regular session this 10th day of November 2020. Mr. Chair, I recommend that we pass this resolution.
I'll go ahead and second your motion, sir. All in favor of passing, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, you've got the floor, ma'am.
We thank you very much for allowing us to, again, receive this wonderful resolution and proclamation during Native American Heritage Month. This pandemic has taught us all many new skills. Our event, which usually takes place this coming weekend at the beautiful Wickham Park Amphitheater under the beautiful pine trees, is now a virtual event. We are Ken Burns incarnate here in Brevard County, creating an event that brought together video from across the nation. Our performers have sent in their videos, and it will be premiered this Saturday and Sunday, starting at 11 o'clock on our YouTube and Facebook channels. And we're very proud to be able to continue that and have the support of our county in so many different ways, including our TDC grants and including our COVID funding that we were able to recoup some of the lost revenues, and keeps us keeping the artists going. So thank you again very much for this honor.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
We have this printed resolution for you. We'll take a picture. Sorry.
Our high-tech camera there.
That's right.
It's the best one.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care. All right, so we'll move on to the consent agenda items under F. We have F1 through and inclusive of F15. I do have a card, public comment card on item F13. Would anyone like another consent item pulled? All right, seeing nothing, may I have a motion to pass consent, so F1 through and inclusive of F15, with the exception of pulling F13 at the time? I'll go ahead and second your motion, Commissioner Pritchett, to approve F1 through and inclusive of F15, less F13 at this present moment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. So we'll go ahead and address F13. We do have two cards on F13. First up, we'll have Peter Carnesale from Viera, and then Angela Abbott from Titusville. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Pete Carnesale, 1910 Independence Avenue, Viera. As many of you know, I am against bonds in general, which have to be paid back with interest by the taxpayers of the entire county, especially when they are for something most of the existing residents probably don't want. I believe that there is a part of this request asking for the authority to issue multifamily revenue bonds that should be deleted from the request. I know that growth in the community as a whole is important for our future, as it increases the tax base and as a result benefits us all. However, multifamily dwellings increase the density of the population as a whole, do not provide the tax revenue to offset their cost in dollars and/or congestion they cause on the roads and burdens they put on our other resources. If we look right here in the neighborhood, we can see congestion already begun for our commuters and residents on Wickham, Vieira Boulevard, Murrell, Stadium Parkway, and Route 1, and many other roads as well. Planning out expansion is serious business, and all these things should be taken into consideration. Hopefully, if my request is granted, the congestion will be a little lighter than it would become otherwise, and additional tax revenues will offset expansion of the roads and other services as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Abbott?
I'm Angela Abbott. I represent the Brevard County Housing Finance Authority. And forgive me, my voice is going. First of all, the request before you is to allow the authority to apply for allocation, which could be used for single-family or multifamily bonds. Before bonds would actually be issued, it would be brought before you again for consideration. So I would like to mention, too, that the bonds are revenue bonds. They're not general obligation bonds. They're paid by the projects, so there's no burden on the tax base. And I'm available to answer questions.
Thank you so much. If someone would care to make a motion one way or the other? I heard a motion to approve from Commissioner Pritchett, and I heard a second from Commissioner Smith. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you all. All right, I don't believe we have any cards under G, the general public comment section on the front end, or I should say closer to the front end of the agenda. We've addressed H as in hotel, H1 and H2 already, so we'll move on to I. I understand from staff and Ms. Rozenka that I1, we have some developments on. Eddie, I believe there's a cost-sharing agreement?
So yes, we've been working with the developer and their representative, and we have an agreement that was part of the attachment in the revised agenda report. And I believe the representative for the developer has waived the appeal. So if that's the case, then we would just need approval from the board to allow us to sign into an agreement and to also get approval for the BCR associated with that.
Just to be absolutely clear, when you say that he's waived the appeal, there's no reason then for us to deny or take any action as to the appeal. You just want us to address the cost-sharing agreement?
Correct. We'll withdraw the appeal.
Okay, perfect. And Ms. Rozenka said that's correct. We'll go ahead and withdraw the appeal. All right, so we'll go ahead. I'll take a motion if someone would care to make one to approve the cost-sharing agreement.
So moved.
All right, I don't know who to give that credit to, Commissioner Smith?
Doesn't matter.
All right, we'll give it to you, Commissioner Smith. And then can I count that as a second, Commissioner Pritchett? All right, we'll give you the second in that case, Commissioner Pritchett. All right, all in favor of approving the cost share agreement, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, we'll go on to I2, I mean to say. I is an India 2. We do have several public comment cards. Would you all like to have staff introduce it or just go straight to public comment? I think we're all pretty well familiar. All right, we'll go to public comment. First up, we'll have Andrea Young from West Melbourne, then Loretta Grella, I hope I'm not mispronouncing that, from Melbourne, and Christina Jackson from Cocoa. So Ms. Young, if you would. Good to see you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me tonight. I wanted to speak on this because, as you know, this is our cultural grants, and I wanted to bring it to the attention of the board that because of COVID, the applicants really should get some kind of credit for that, because this has never happened before. The events that many of them had to be done this year, they were not able to do, so they immediately had to be resilient, and many of them had virtual events. So this is something that I think that they should be commended for, actually. So now, going forward, the ROI, the return on investment, is not something that was on the original judging criteria. I went back to the original cultural marketing program from 1819, and we tried to make all of the questions according to what is on this, what the county was asking for. So we didn't question them only on what is here, which I'm sure you have this. So nowhere on there is there ROI, so they were not judged on that, and that was not a part of this at all. No, we can do that. We can certainly do that going forward. If I'm on that particular board again, we can certainly add that to it. But for this year, for the grants that have already been scored, I would ask for grace and please to let them go through as they have been submitted. If you would please. Adding the ROI. We may have fewer applicants next year, which would be fine, I'm sure, but at least they would know about it going ahead, and the applications will be written. So based on if we add that to it and we bring you stronger applicants next year, would you please go forward and approve them as written this year, especially since one of the applicants we have is the Native American that is here tonight, that whole group. They're, I think, number 15 on the list. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Hey, Ms. Young, I'll just give you the heads up, unless I hear something really compelling to the contrary from one of the subsequent speakers. That's what I intend to do. I think I can live with it this year in terms of how it was done, but I don't want to punish folks where, through no fault of their own, they find themselves essentially in the situation that they're in. So I think there are extenuating circumstances this year that hopefully will not exist next year. I would ask you, at least from one of five of us, to do whatever you can if you're involved in the subcommittee next year and the TDC next year, to try to focus on the ROI, because I think I'm going to be a little bit more of a stickler going forward. But I think just given the circumstances this year, I don't want to be overly heavy-handed with it. So that's where I'm at, but we'll see where the rest of them are at.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Lober. Thank you.
All right, next up we have Loretta, is it Grella? Welcome.
Okay. Hi, thank you. First of all, I echo what she just said, so I don't really have a lot to say. I'm from Space Coast Ballet Company, and we are up for a grant. I'll just say a little bit about who we are. 18 years at the King Center, the Nutcracker every year. It's their best show, actually, that they do perform. We have people from Orlando come in, and really, Vero, a lot of people, because what we do is we have the best of the best that are artistic directors that we bring in, and our principal dancers are usually from New York City Ballet, Boston Ballet, American Ballet Theater, and 95% of the cast is local and 5% are professionals. And we've been doing it 18 years, and it's the start of everybody's holiday. It sells out, it's great, and thank you for considering us, and thank you for supporting us.
And I'll just kind of serve to echo once more some of my comments to Ms. Young. I think there's going to be more of an ROI focus, at least from my perspective, next year. And diplomatically, how can I put this? The two ballets that were on the list, from an ROI perspective, at least how they identified it, weren't the strongest of all the candidates. I guess that's a fair way to put it. So I just want to suggest, well, you may be able, if you have it passed tonight, to use this for the coming year. I don't know that it's necessarily safe to build the subsequent year's budget on the expectation that it'll be around next year. So just to be fully candid with you, where I'm coming from. Commissioner Tobias, as long as you don't make her do ballet, you're welcome to ask whatever you'd like. Okay, I'll give it to you at the end then.
Okay, thank you,
ma'am.
Noted, and we'll work on that.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Jackson from COCO. Welcome.
I'm just a regular citizen. I'm not on any cultural thing. But I think as the pandemic has shown, we are social beings. We need social activities. We need cultural things. And doing this where it was kind of like, hey, you guys might not get money right before it, that's really bad business. That looks bad to, like, hey, you guys have been approved, you're on this list, and, we've judged you, and now we're not, kind of the idea of we're not going to do any grants. That was upsetting. And I was wondering, with return of investment, with Mr. Tobias talking about billboards, what is your return of investment on your ideas? That's a question I'd like to know.
And I'm not going to obligate Mr. Tobias to answer that, Commissioner.
But you're requiring these guys to show return of investment. And if you guys have ideas on return of what you'd rather spend the money on, I think it's proper to show us return of investment for your ideas.
Okay.
I think that's just proper etiquette, if nothing else, not business. And billboards, that idea was thrown out there. My kids are like, who the heck watches billboards anymore? This is the internet. When you plan a vacation, I know I would always go online, and you have your days planned. You do that before you arrive. Billboards are when you're driving around. That's not very often that you're going to go, hey, we got this plan going to Universal, but there's a billboard here. So to me, this is the age of the internet. You don't use billboards anymore, if that's one of the ideas. So as you have said, I think it's a good idea. Have the goals that you want for next year. I agree with that. That's, I think, a good business deal there, so that they can meet those goals. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Madam.
Thanks. No questions?
Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I'm not going to go over each one of these, everything from ballet to dinosaurs, but I'm going to give you 3 reasons. Independently, each one of these 3 reasons suffices as to why you should vote no. Cumulatively, there should be no question. So I'll start out with the first one. Under Florida State Statute Section 125.0104, we must find that these expenditures, quote, shall have as one of its main purposes the attraction of tourists. If you look at the spreadsheet, 90% of these activities have a majority of attendees that are not, in fact, tourists. Some are as low as 2%. When you draw 98% from a local area, I don't see how we as a board can find 2% meeting the statutory definition of main purpose of attracting tourists. If it is, then we've clearly failed. Number 2, and I brought this up, but I think it begs repeating, these organizations have received cumulatively $197,250 from CARES money. Their current request is $175,000. So, in other words, we have made whole these organizations more than what this list will, in fact, do. For the organizations that the last list had not applied for the CARE dollars, this board recently allocated an additional $1.5 million to make up for those charities that had yet not received that. Again, I didn't have the information, but this does not include any additional federal funding they have received through PPP sources. And I hate to bring it up, but I have to. Two commissioners have a $5 million pot of money that they could allocate to any one of these organizations. And finally, number 3. The TDT collections are down 18.5% this year, which is roughly $3 million. They're down so much that at our CARES workshop, the TDO requested $750,000 in additional marketing. As such, these funds should be allocated accordingly. I'm not an expert. I threw billboards out there. So let me give you numbers that were provided me by the marketing office. Magazines, according to a study done, 12% of those who view marketing materials in magazines visit Brevard County. Hard to believe, but that's the study that we commissioned and we paid for. So given the fact that we get a high rate of return for advertising in magazines, Given the fact that these organizations have been made whole when it comes to CARES, probably over when it comes to triple P funding, and finally, and most importantly, the fact that a primary purpose cannot be tourism when you have an organization. I'm not making these numbers up. You all have the spreadsheet here. We have one that is I exaggerated, it's not 2%, it's 2.06%. We have another one that is 2.83%. Routinely, these are below 10 and 15%. So my motion would be, Mr. Chair, to reject legislative finding that these events in Attachment A meet the requirement of Florida statute and that one of the main purposes of these events is not attraction of tourists, and hopefully the office will then fund these in areas, whether it be billboards, magazines, or internet. So that's the motion, Mr. Chair.
We're going to go ahead and accept your motion, but how do you really feel? Do we have a second?
That's my line.
I stole it from you today. Commissioner Nardi.
Yeah, I mean, how hard would it be to go through this list and find those organizations that do meet the requirement of the state statute? Because what I'm concerned about is the spreadsheet's different from the attachment that was included with the agenda. Because the 2% that you're citing from the spreadsheet is not what it says in our agenda. I'm not saying that you were not correct. I'm saying we have two bits of information that are not consistent. So that's sort of going to be my question.
Mr.
Yes,
Chair,
sir, please.
I'd be glad to provide, I did not change this other than print it on this, I got directly from the tourism office. In it, it is the most recent one that has the ROI, but there is a outside Brevard County visitor number as well as
Yeah, I have it
percentage.
too. What I'm saying is that both pieces that were included in our agenda aren't consistent with each other.
Okay.
So that is my question in addition to whether or
Yeah,
not.
that would have to be, I guess, Mr. Chair.
Not a question
sir,
for
please.
you.
The tourism, I guess.
I saw Peter. Oh, you moved up front. Gosh, you're like a ninja. All right. I don't know if you care to comment on that or if you're aware of any potential discrepancy.
No, sir. I'm looking at the 11 by 17 sheet of paper. That was what was attached that had the ROI numbers in it.
Yes, sir.
I'm just looking at the out-of-county visitors where, like, for example, number 7, project number 7, and 7 on your packet shows two different numbers.
Okay, the correct number for number 7, which is the Ogallie Arts District, was they had approximately 1.5 million attendance last year, 43,000 from outside the county, which represented 2.83%. We also calculated a visitor spending of $2.3 million, which was an ROI of 502 to 1.
Because it says 30% are outside of the county on your narrative, and then it says 2.06%.
Okay, apologies if there's an inconsistency. The spreadsheet is what is the actual
Yeah.
accurate numbers.
And Peter, this is the spreadsheet you're talking about that has the ROI
Yeah, I have
numbers?
that too. That's why
Yeah.
I don't understand what this is.
Okay.
That was included with our packet. It shows it as a draft, but that was what was in the agenda.
Apologies about that. I'm not sure what happened there.
You know, I don't know if I stated this in the recent past, but I believe, at least at some prior meeting when we discussed either this or another TDC allocation, I talked about having tangential or incidental benefit to the local community. If we attract X number of people and we have 50 times X also show up who happen to be from the local community, great. I don't know that that in and of itself means that a primary purpose of the allocation or even of the activity isn't the attraction of tourists. So I'm not going to punish a group because they happen to also disproportionately benefit locals. I don't know if that was the intended goal. I don't know that even if it wasn't the intended goal, if it really impacts what the purpose was. I think that we can find legislatively that a primary purpose was the attraction of tourists, irrespective of the percentage of locals that show up versus tourists.
Mr. Chair,
Please, sir.
is this it's worth spending money on space because we got Velcro type of analogy?
I don't know that I'd necessarily agree with that, but if you choose to see it that way, I suppose that's okay.
I would fall back on your ROI. I think that whether that was in the packet or not, those are determinations that we need to make. And I think it goes to, as you pointed out, just how graphically different the ROIs are concerning these different expenditures. Some are a factor of just, again, these are not my numbers, these are numbers provided to us, by a factor of 250 times that of others. I appreciate the work that was done, but it's not evident in the product given to us. If it was narrowed down to those that provide a strong ROI, maybe I could wrap my head around it. But at providing thousands of dollars to organizations that draw, again, these are not my numbers, 190 people to Brevard County with an ROI with a spending of less than $10,000 doesn't really seem as though it's worthy of receiving thousands of dollars to do that. So whether the motion is accepted or not, I will have to demurely say this is not the intent of statute.
To kind of backtrack just a little bit to one of the things you said earlier in the comment, that you might be able to wrap your head around or get behind approving the higher ROIs. I have no problem bifurcating this. If you want to make a motion after either having your first die for lack of a second, or if you want to withdraw it, if you want to address those over a certain ROI figure, I'm happy to accept that as a motion if you'd like to make it that way. But in the meanwhile, Commissioner Pritchett?
Mr. Kranis, do you know the return on investment for our marketing cost? Do we know how much we get a return on for every dollar we spend?
Yeah, we've just started doing some studies to that effect, and the range right now that we're seeing is about 20 to 30 to 1, somewhere in that range. And then also, Mr. Chair, apologies, Mr.
Yes,
Liesenfeld pointed out to me, the original submission had a description of each project. But when we went back and looked at our numbers and our ROI, that's where the spreadsheet came in. So the pros that has the project number and some information about it isn't going to match the data that we came up with more recently. So that was the reason for the difference there.
But you still stand by, just to be totally clear, the spreadsheet that we've already
Correct.
referenced?
That's the most recent, most accurate numbers that we have. Yes, sir.
I appreciate that.
Mr. Kranis, when your committee put this together, I'm just going to throw this out there. Y'all spent some time on trying to put this analysis together on this, and it's been a while, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, the actual analysis was done by staff, not by anybody on the committee.
Okay. I have a hard time not putting this through just because of the time period we've been with it, and it's. But if we were to move forward, and since we're having marketing bring back a 20 or 30 to 1, that might be like maybe something we would throw out. In the business world, 5 to 1 is considered a good ROI on investment dollars. But each one of these are bringing back, a positive ROI, which is good. So that might be a good discussion to have, even what we do moving forward. But I'm going to struggle with not doing this, because even if we pulled out the lower ones, those are the ones that are minimal amount of money. So I'm going to see where you guys land. I probably would support passing it, but I think moving forward in the future, we should maybe give you our thoughts on a parameter where we want a bottom line to be as far as return on investment,
yes,
if marketing's able to pull those kinds of return in.
Sure.
And whoever ends up on TDC next year, on behalf of the board, I think it's going to be incumbent on him or her to make sure that this is a focus, and whether he or she wants to appoint himself to the marketing committee might not be a bad idea. But with respect to Commissioner Tobias' motion on the floor, anyone care to second it, or I'll consider it dead for want of a second? Okay, it's failed for want of a second. So is there another motion one way or the other? I'll go ahead and second your motion to approve it as indicated on the spreadsheet that we've discussed, Commissioner Pritchett. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, passes 3-2 with Commissioners Tobias and Isnardi in the negative. All right, J1, I believe, J1, have we pulled that from the agenda today?
No, sir, we haven't officially pulled it, so we would need...
Motion to continue?
We need your action to table it. It
When would
doesn't
you-
need to be tabled to a date certain because it's not an advertised item.
Okay, so how about a motion to continue it until such time as staff and the applicant are ready to bring it back?
That's fine.
May I have that?
Table it till,
Okay, motion to table as discussed from Commissioner Pritchett. I'll go ahead and second that motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, sir. All right, last page. J2, another TDO item, the Sports Events Grant Program.
So this is, there are 10 grants being requested. The TDC and its subcommittee voted unanimously to support these. These are sporting events that are run by independent operators. Some are for-profit, some are not for-profit. It just varies depending on the event. But just one call out is the Florida Senior Games. That was not submitted as part of the cycle. It was actually a late addition because the Florida Sports Foundation had an opportunity to move the senior games. They wanted to move them from South Florida, and they were looking at Brevard because of our success with the AAU Junior Olympics. They believed that that was an opportunity to bring it here. So it's going to generate, we're looking at probably 1,000 to 1,200 athletes and probably in the neighborhood of 1,500 room nights for that project. And the committee received a presentation from the Florida Sports Foundation and supported it. So for the tune of $12,000 for that.
All right, Commissioner Tobias, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know you're
Yes,
going to
sir.
be surprised, but I'm going to give you some reasons now to vote against this allocation. First of all, I understand that it is predicated on reimbursement of verified room nights, which is unquestionably superior than a direct cash grant. However, I would like to note there is a cost to this. Mr. Kranis informed me that his staff members spent about 20 hours verifying these room nights and vacation rentals. So while legal and mentioned by Mr. Kranis, I find it odd that we are subsidizing for-profit organizations. One of these applications even notes that they just don't make enough profit as to reason why they need some of this money. Another reason, I find it quite disturbing that some of these grants will go towards paying city fees. For example, there's a significant fee charged by Cocoa Beach in the Thunder in the Cocoa Beach event budget. So in other words, we're giving money to these organizations that then is turning around and spending thousands on city fees. And of course, some of these events will be held here whether or not we award these grants. For example, the 12th annual Cocoa Beach Triathlon is not going to be held in Dick Shooter, Idaho, population 15. Thunder on Cocoa Beach is not going to be held in Three-Way, Arizona, home of 3,708 people. The Southeast Regional Surfing Championship is not going to be in Sugar Tit, Kentucky, population 6,034. Regardless, if we focus on these grants to generate more room nights, our funding and process seems to indicate that improvements can be made in this process. Organizations should only get awarded prorated for the number of nights that they provide. The way it is set up now, if an organization provides evidence that 80% of that room night expectation is met, they then receive the amount, and I think that needs to be full amount, that needs to be held accordingly. Additionally, our awards could be normalized on a room night basis. I went over the numbers of projected room nights in the Sports Committee Award, and here's a surprise, there was no correlation whatsoever. For example, the flag football AAU National Championship was being awarded roughly $5 a room night, and another organization was, here we go, the 12th annual Cocoa Beach Triathlon and Duathlon was being awarded with a $25. So there's no normalcy here if this is the one intent. So the conclusion here, as we deal with the 18.5% year-over-year reduction in revenue, is imperative that we prioritize general marketing over events, and I'm not making this one up, dog bikini contests. That's one of them in here. As such, I suggest we reject the recommendation of the TDC and take steps necessary to reallocate this towards traditional and digital marketing vendors, Mr. Chair.
All right, I've got to ask, you know where I'm going to go with this. Dog bikini contests, is that some microscopic subsection of one of these? Or
it's a subsection of an event that is a fundraiser, yes, sir. It's a surfing event, but as a side event, they also have dog surfing and other activities. But it is a fundraiser for the Humane Society, where they have a traditional surfing event that is scored and surfers are awarded, you know, first, second, third, et cetera.
Well, let me ask you. Obviously, that's not one that's for profit, just based on the organization.
No, that's a nonprofit. Yes, sir.
I would like to get, and I think Commissioner Tobias did raise an interesting question. You know, I'm not saying that the room nights are the be-all and end-all for every purpose. I think there's certain items where they have more value than others. For instance, USSSA, I think there's more value in looking at room nights for obvious reasons. For something like this, I think benefit to locals over and above attracting tourists is something that I can't ignore. That's not to say that I'm willing to let them off the hook on their obligation to have a primary purpose of attracting tourists, but if it happens to benefit locals tremendously as well, wonderful, all the better for that. But as to the value proposition, why is it or how is it that we've come to find ourselves in a situation where what's on the agenda is being suggested has a different value for different organizations per room night? What were the metrics that were used to determine this event gets X number of dollars per room night, this event gets 1.2x or 0.7x or whatever the number may be? Why are we treating them from a room night standpoint at different value levels? Was there some other metric that was evaluated to determine the funding levels?
No, sir. The committee and the TDC developed guidelines, and in those guidelines, it does specify a range of award based on the level of room nights. So, for instance, if the room nights are over 1,000, then they are eligible for up to $20,000. But it doesn't guarantee them $20,000, so they have to, in their application, show that there's other purpose. If it's under that, then there's another range, so 5,000, 10,000, et cetera. So the committee, you know, deliberated quite a long time on these, and in some cases, the applications were not as strong as others, so they opted, rather than give them the maximum for their category, they would lower it. So that's why they don't all match each other.
Okay. And let me ask, because this actually does make a difference to me. It may or may not for other commissioners. How was the end vote at the subcommittee level and then at the TDC level? Was this something where they were both unanimous? I just am curious.
Sir. They were both unanimous, yes, sir.
Okay, that has some weight with me at least. Any other questions for Mr. Kranis? Commissioner?
I just want to make a comment. I think most of these are in your district, Commissioner Lober, and your district, Commissioner Smith, which you've ended up being a heavy tourism districts with the sports and the surf. So my question would be, you guys are, you know, in your districts, do you think these are drawing good tourism? Are they creating a good economy in your districts? I think your opinion on this would weigh heavily on me. You know, we have launches, we have good turnout, so that would make a big difference on what you think in your perspective.
I'm happy to jump in unless you want to, Commissioner Smith, however you want to do it.
No, I think she's absolutely correct. Yes, I get a lot of feedback on not bikini contests for dogs, but most of these other things. The businesses love these events because it does bring a lot of people in, whether it's from out of the county or whether it's just people that live here that come out of their homes to support these things, and the businesses, they're out, they're going to have lunch, they're out, they're going to have breakfast, that kind of thing. So yeah, I hear it, I see it.
And I'll just echo that without being too repetitious here. I think that the folks that live in that area obviously disproportionately benefit. I don't know that there's anything wrong with that. As you pointed out, just in all candor, the areas that drive the most into the TDT have traditionally received the most from the TDT, and whether that's right or wrong is a subjective question. But I can tell you, at least insofar as this year is concerned, and it'll probably be the case to some degree next year, I think it's nice to get back to some sense of normalcy, especially with everything that's still ongoing in the country on a couple different fronts. So if we can give folks something that they can enjoy doing locally here, and it also brings in tourists, I'm certainly supportive of it this year. I think maybe for next year, again, just one person out of five's opinion, we may want to have a greater degree of focus or perhaps have some level of preferential treatment toward events that are for-profit as opposed to the nonprofit events. I'm sorry, I believe I stated that backwards. We should have some preferential treatment toward the not-for-profit events as opposed to the for-profit events. But I think, again, given where we're at on a few different issues on a national and local scale, I'd like for folks to have something positive to go out and do when they've been cooped up for months and months on end. All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Pritchett to approve, a second from Commissioner Smith. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
All right, passes 4-1 with Commissioner Tabaya in the negative.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. All right, now to a hopefully non-controversial one. Ian, before you introduce it, I can just tell you as to item J3, staff direction on the CDBG coronavirus request for proposal. I'm happy to support it. I don't know if anyone wants to hear an intro, but if someone wants to make a motion just to approve it, I'm happy to go that way too, whatever you all want. All right, a motion that I'll second from Commissioner Pritchett to approve item J as in Juliet 3. Ms. Bentley, we don't need anything else in the record, do we? All right. Any discussion on it? All in favor of approving J as in Juliet 3, just say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, J3 passes unanimously. Last item is J4. Again, I don't know if anyone wants any input or staff intro, but I've got a couple thoughts at least before we have any sort of a motion or a vote on it. This is one in my district. I can tell you that I wasn't exactly thrilled when I saw it on the agenda before, prior to it getting pulled. I did speak with the EDC. I spoke with the in-house counsel for this company. One of the things that, frankly, I just didn't believe when I read it and I was extremely skeptical of was the at least implicit, if not explicit, threat that they would take their business or a portion of their business to China. I figured if they're spending millions of dollars here, why are they going to pick up and move to China for $5,000 a year? It just doesn't make sense to me. When I spoke with their in-house counsel and with EDC, what I found out, though, is that they already have a manufacturing set up in China, and they have manufactured there previously, so it's not that they would really be making as drastic a changes as I had thought would be the case. So there is at least some realistic possibility that may happen. I'll tell you as well that one of the concerns that I had, that I expressed to them, both to the EDC and to a greater extent to the company that's the applicant, is with respect to local ownership. I've asked them to, prior to this coming back to us, to put together a list of folks that have any sort of a meaningful interest in the company. So if they have an interest of, let's say, 100,000 or more, I'd like to know who they are, because if everyone locally has a number of different businesses and they own the supply chain, the fasteners and the logistics and the inventory systems, and they're all local, I don't know that that would be as easy for them to move to China. So I'm waiting on that. I would not be in a position where I'd approve the thing outright tonight, but I think that, moving it for this purpose is something I could live with. The other thing is, with respect to their wages that they listed, I'm not going to get into the play-by-play unless someone really wants me to, but I think the average wage, if they want the full amount, I would like to see them increase that to a degree. I'm not going to dispute that it is a very fair average wage and it's a very competitive average wage, but when they're asking for any sort of incentive by way of tax dollars from the government, even if it's only to a portion of what they're paying in taxes, I think they have to go above and beyond, in my mind, what's even competitive and be extremely competitive in order to justify us giving them some kind of a break. Otherwise, when this comes back, just in full disclosure, I'm probably not going to support giving them the full amount that they've requested. But, with that, I'm happy to support it for tonight's purposes, but they've got a little bit of an uphill battle to keep my support when it comes back. So I don't know if someone wants to make a motion as to this one.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Say again, Commissioner? Yeah, I'm waiting until, and we have a motion from Commissioner Smith to approve. I'm just waiting to get a few bits of information from the company, and when they get that to me, certainly I'll be in a better position to know what I'm inclined to do. But I just don't want someone to see my approval of this tonight as an indication that I'm absolutely on board, because frankly, if you ask me tonight, to make the end decision would be no. But I want to give them the opportunity to put together a few things that I can look at. And, frankly, if they make a case, I'll support it. If they don't, or there's a question, then I won't. All right, so we've got a second from Commissioner Pritchett. Commissioner Isnardi?
And I guess I would just say I would be cautious if you're debating on whether or not when you support this when it comes back. And of course, you can think for yourself and make your own decisions, but I don't want it to be a negotiation between you and the EDC or you and the company without this board's approval, because taxpayers supported the tax abatement, and I think we need jobs available to all residents, not just engineers with $70,000 a year jobs. I think we need to have, I welcome jobs in all pay scales, because I think that we have a varied skill set, as far as our residents go. So, I would be very supportive of this, because I know we're very good at clawing back if they don't provide, if they don't fulfill their end of the bargain. So I just want to be cautious, that.
I don't disagree, and I apologize if I was anything less than completely clear. If it's a relatively low-paying job, if it's a $9 an hour job, but they're paying $12 an hour, great, excellent. Wherever they are on that scale or on that bell curve, I just want to make sure that they're on the high end for that industry. So if the industry standard is $49,000 a year, I'd rather see that they're a bit above that, not just competitive with the industry.
And I can appreciate that, but we as a government don't even pay our employees as far as, where they should be, probably even middle ground as far as, the industry standard. So even we fail at that. So I just want to be cautious that taxpayers approved the tax abatement program for businesses. I want to make sure that we have these jobs available for the residents that meet those skill sets. Because if people don't want to work, they're not going to work for a low wage. But I don't think it should disqualify them for applying for the abatement. That's just my 2 cents.
And if they qualify, they qualify.
Correct. I don't want to start telling them what they need to pay their employees, because it's not our job to tell private business on how much what they should be doing with their employees. I know they're asking for an abatement.
Yes, ma'am.
But that's not a requirement. That's not what voters approved. It wasn't a requirement on there that they have a minimum wage.
Well, nothing says it can't be a factor that's considered either.
Right, of course. But I just want it known that it's not the board making that request, it's Commissioner Lober.
Fair enough. Commissioner Pritchett?
Just an FYI, pretty soon they're all going to be making a minimum $15 an hour.
That's true, too.
So, yeah.
All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. I'll go ahead and I'll call the question as to approving this item. All in favor of approving item J as in Juliet 4, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
All right, we have the motion passing 4-1 with Commissioner Tabaya in the negative. All right, last item here, we have item J5 with respect to the leases for D1, D3, and D5. All right, I have a motion to approve by Commissioner Isnardi.
Second.
A second by Commissioner Pritchett. Any discussion? All right, all in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, we don't have anything, Mr. Abate or Ms. Bentley, that you're aware by way of public comment for item K? Nothing new?
No.
Okay, I don't have any cards up here. So we'll move on to item L as in Lima board reports. Mr. Abate, sir?
No report.
Ms. Bentley, ma'am?
No report.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Yes, sir. I have one request. I
Yes,
wanted to mention this. We made the motion at the CARES meeting to do the $5 million for each district, and I do support each of us having those decisions. I was talking to the county manager. There could be a little situation as far as the public safety money going back from the two districts. It could possibly lose its ability to have the freedom that it has right now as far as the public safety funds. So I think if we would just take just a little pause till about the next meeting till we figure this out to make sure that those funds are able to go back to public safety one, so that they don't lose the freedom that we've had established recently with the, is this correct, sir?
Yeah, there's an issue that I discussed with you that you, relating to the two commissioners who were going to reallocate the money into the public safety fund and where those dollars came from. And that was, I believe, in speaking to the county attorney, an unresolved issue, because if it came from reimbursement from payroll and benefits, there would be more freedom with that money and you would not have to spend it by the end of December. If it came from just the pool of money and was put into the public safety fund, just the initial $105 million put into there and have to go through Tetra Tech, that money would have to be spent by the end of December. And the board didn't address that during the workshop, so that's what the outstanding issue would be.
Okay, so I think maybe if we just come back the next one, do that. And other thing, Scott Ellis, I mean, I understand, I really believe legally we're okay, but I was also going to just request if we would come back the next meeting and go ahead, we have to be ready for it then, and go ahead and let the public know where we're going to be spending our COVID funds in our districts, just in a public meeting. I think that this would help and bring a lot of comfort to Mr. Ellis, and I think we'd be ready for it at that time as well, and then we can just agree to move forward.
I think that's a good goal. I'll certainly make every effort to try to have everything lined up. I may not have the exact values, just depending on where things go, but at this point, just to put folks at least a little closer to the same page I'm on, I'm looking, and I have staff looking at a number of different potential allocations. The $5 million that was assigned to D2, frankly, in all likelihood, will be used to fund a variety of different things, at least as it stands now. I do have them researching the legality and the propriety of some of the expenditures. For instance, one of the items that I'm looking at is hazard pay for the firefighters. That would be a one-time allocation to each of the folks that actually respond and put themselves in a position where they might be exposed to COVID. I don't know if that's something that we can do. I don't know if that's something that we can't do. That's something that I believe is an ongoing question that staff is looking at. Another item that I'm looking at is potentially awarding some money to help the construction of the EOC, or at least to offset that to some degree. There are a number of different initiatives that my office, and also to an extent that Myra has been helping me research, that are district-specific, but I don't have all of the numbers, and I don't even, at this point, know whether all of the avenues that we're looking at would qualify. My thought is some probably will and some probably won't.
Okay,
So-
I'm thinking we're getting close to a time zone, so I think probably by the zoning meeting, December 3rd, we probably come back with
Oh, that's fair.
with what we're doing, and then we can just approve it as a board and get some comfort with Mr. Ellis, then we'll all know what we're doing with the funds as well.
Well, I think with where things are at now, maybe the best bet, Commissioner Pritchett, if there's some ambiguity or there is some concern with respect to the issue of D3 and D5 funds having a time.
I support you. I just thought from Mr. Ellis's perspective, I think it would give him great comfort.
Well, frankly, I don't know that Mr. Ellis is going to be in that position terribly much longer. So if he,
Yeah.
with all respect, if he refuses to cut a check, unless his successor shares his opinion, I don't know that the issue would exist come a few weeks from that time. That said, I certainly have looked into it. I don't agree with his legal position. I'm not sure.
I don't either.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether he has sought or not sought an opinion or multiple opinions on that. I have absolutely no idea. But I don't want our hands to be forced if we're doing something that's proper at this point. What I would suggest, though, that we may want to consider, and I would certainly be happy to second, is if you have a specific concern as to the D3 and the D5 allocations, to move to authorize staff and to request that staff either get an opinion from Tetra Tech or alternatively authorize them to expend some number of dollars in having outside counsel look at it. I don't know if any of that would be helpful.
Absolutely. I thought we were doing that already.
Actually, if the board made a motion that those dollars for District 3 and District 5, rather than coming out of the CARES $105 million fund, came out of what we had recommended, which was to create a public safety fund. So it's $10 million additional dollars that are public sheriff and fire rescue payroll and benefit dollars, and that those be the dollars. So we would move from 13 to 23 million. If the board wanted to do it that way, then we would resolve that issue, at least for those two.
Nardi, are you good with that? Because you had allocated, that's where you want it to go. I'm sorry.
No, I apologize.
Chair.
No, we've got Commissioner Tabaya, then Commissioner Isnardi.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. Don't worry. Commissioner Isnardi?
Yeah, I, from the beginning, didn't want $5 million per district. I understand why commissioners may have made that decision, but I think I was with Commissioner Tabaya that in the belief that each district shouldn't have $5 million to do with what we please, that it needs to be part of our COVID CARES funding that takes care of the whole county. So I'm happy to make that motion that those, I guess essentially that the total of $10 million does not come to our districts. Would that be the motion that you're looking for?
Yeah, I think the way that I worded it was that the dollars would be used to reimburse the payroll that we had discussed at the workshop, payroll dollars, and then put those dollars into the public safety fund, which we're already doing for the other $13 million.
And this is obviously, just for sake of decent minutes, this is with the very explicit understanding that this obviates any allocation from D3 and D5 as to the $5 million apiece that was essentially delegated to each of them to do with as they please within the confines of the
But how does that
criteria.
work, considering that the board voted without D3 and D5, the board voted to give us money? So how do they give us money, but it doesn't really come to us? We just have to reallocate it, correct?
Right, you're reallocating it.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion, I guess, assuming that Commissioner Tabaya is okay with that motion.
Well, before we have motions, if you don't mind, Shannon, do you like how this is phrased? Is there something you want to see added or removed from this? I just want to make sure that we're not causing more problems by trying to resolve an issue. Thank you.
I would just clarify.
Are you on?
I'm on now.
Okay.
I would just clarify that the $5 million allocated to Commissioner Tabaya and Commissioner Isnardi's districts goes to pay for the payroll. Money that would normally go to the payroll would now be allocated to the public safety fund.
And Commissioner Isnardi, is that what your motion contemplates?
Yes.
And Commissioner Isnardi, if you'd like to, you can throw in that District 1's funds will go to Just Parish Hospital. I don't need to do anything different with it.
And I just...
Well, I would keep that separate if that's what you want to do with those
Okay.
in that way, and I'm happy to support you with that.
Yeah.
But just so we're clear, it's not that district, at least my district, it's not that my district doesn't want the money and we're not saying we want to take care of our districts. At least my position, and I believe Commissioner Tabaya's position, at least from what he said at the meeting, was that we wanted our dollars to cover everyone in the district. And I think that this is the best way to allocate those funds that way.
And I just want to reiterate, well, I don't want to convolute the motion. So we have a motion. Do we have a second on that?
Yeah.
Second, Mr. Chair.
A second from Commissioner Tabaya. Go ahead and give it to you, sir. Let's take care of this, then we can move on to other items. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously.
Commissioner Lober, if y'all
Please.
don't mind, I'll just go ahead and clean mine out now. We'll make motions on y'all so we
I
can come back.
don't think you need a motion at this point. I mean, you can, as
I-
long as it's vetted by Tetra Tech.
I would just, I was going to say, be specific with
Has
your
to go
motion
through
that is
Tetra
to
Tech.
cover COVID
Has to
related.
be, it has to be COVID related, Tetra Tech.
Ms. Bentley,
and-
do we need
and
a
low
motion?
risk.
Given your prior motions at the workshop were not exactly as clear as we would like them, we would appreciate a motion with those conditions that it's CARES-related COVID impacts and Tetra Tech has approved, and that we have an agreement with a clawback and audit provision.
Okay, I make a motion that District 1 will apply their funds to Just Parish Hospital. It'll be COVID related, go through Tetra Tech for their approval.
Commissioner Tabaya?
A CARES-funded, guess just CARES-funded, Tetra Tech approved,
I don't know. that-
CARES-related,
I
CARES-funded.
think we've already done that essentially.
Well,
though.
that's what I
don't-
thought, so I don't know
I
why.
think she's just asking for a
District
clearer
1 wants to
motion.
make it
I was
more
just making the
specific.
comment
Well,
now,
let's-
so I'm,
Yeah, because I'm happy to accept the motion, but Commissioner Tabaya, may I have just a minute, and then I'll get to you, sir?
Yes.
I want to make sure that we address whatever the underlying concern is. If there's something that staff needs clarification on, I'd rather just clarify it and make sure everyone's on the same page, because we're talking about a lot of money.
Right. We're looking for clarification because during the last workshop meeting, you did say CARES criteria and Tetra Tech approved a number of times, but when you made your final motion,
Right.
it was a little bit unclear. So that's why I'm asking
you
for the
said low risk
clarification.
also.
And I think the bottom line is, and if someone feels differently, certainly we can address it. As to D3 and D5, to those $5 million apiece, I think that's now addressed, I believe, to everyone's satisfaction. As to the others, my understanding, and if someone feels differently, let's figure it out now. it has to be an expense that's considered a low-risk expense per Tetra Tech. And it has to be something that occurs within Brevard County, though not necessarily within the individual commissioner's district. Or, it could potentially span multiple districts, like the hazard pay that I was talking about wouldn't benefit one district more than the other necessarily. It would apply from the south end to the north end.
Okay, I'm comfortable anyway. I was just ready, so I was just, since they were all cleaned up, I was just going to clean this one up too while y'all still worked on it, but.
And it's kind of one of those things where you already have the authority to do it. I hate to ask for permission to do what you can already do.
Okay.
Do you want to do the motion, Commissioner Pritchett? I think Commissioner Pritchett, maybe part of your thinking is you want it clear to everybody where you want those funds to go.
Yeah, because I've already
So
decided.
I'm happy to second your motion.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Tobias, I apologize, sir.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was under the impression that we had already delegated that authority to the individual commissioner to make those determinations with the guidelines that were specified, and that's what had gotten Mr. Ellis so excited. If we do go through this motion, I voted against delegating these funds to the individual commissioners. That's why I assume Commissioner Isnardi decided to reallocate those back to the Public Safety Fund, which was generally under the control of the county manager's office. So if this does come up, it's not that I'm against your decision to allocate them towards any one organization. It is just a indication that my initial vote of nay against allocating the initial $5 million to everyone stands. So it doesn't matter who you allocate it to unless it's back to the larger pot, which was my intention. So please don't think I believe that your $5 million going to parish is impure or improper or anything like that. I just don't like the idea of us having $5 million to delegate as we wish.
Commissioner Isnardi?
And while I agree with you as well, Commissioner Tobias, we're sort of stuck with what we are. And so my thinking is, not much different than yours other than that it's already done. So, we've allocated our funds back to public safety, which I'm fine with. And I'm fine with the reimbursement to parish. And I think I made it pretty clear during the workshop. Because you're choosing to use those funds, which whether or not I agree with or not, should have gone to each district. I'm not going to not support your motion because that's within your power to do it with those funds. The one positive is that it's going to one, but I'll support it only because that's the authority that you have based on the previous motion of the board. So I'm okay with that.
I'll throw out there as well. I'll support it if it's something that you want to do.
I'll support yours.
But that said, and as to that, I don't want there to be confusion in terms of viewing this as setting a precedent where they have to come back after we've already gotten the authority. Because frankly, I don't want to have to come back to get everyone's blessing, even if they would bless it anyway. I'd rather just go and get it done. Yeah. So my thought is, as long as it passes the criteria as to the portion that was allocated for D2 to disperse according to the criteria that we discussed, frankly, I'm happy to let you know where I'm at any meeting. But I don't plan on coming back to ask for permission to allocate what I've already been authorized to allocate. But believe me, I know Commissioner Tobias may be worried I'm going to give it to Bear Assets, or, I apologize to the folks that own Bear Assets. But that's not going to be on the recipient list as far as I'm concerned. So it's disproportionately, as I can tell, it's going to be things that benefit the entirety of Brevard County. There may well be some items, though, that are specific to D2. I'm not going to mislead you and tell you otherwise. If there's an allocation to the port, obviously that's disproportionately going to help D2 out. I just don't know at this point. So with that caveat and with that qualification that I don't plan on asking for the permission as you cordially are doing, I'll go ahead and support it. So we have a motion. Do we have a second? We do have a second. Okay. I'll go ahead and call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nay. All right. Passes 4-1 with Commissioner Tobias in the negative. Anything further, Commissioner Pritchett? All right, I apologize if we overcomplicated it a little bit, but yeah, I figure if we can hash it out now and have everyone leave with a degree of clarity, at least we'll do what we can on that front. Commissioner Tobias?
No report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Smith, sir?
No report.
Commissioner Isnardi, ma'am?
Just want to let the board know that by the swearing in on the 17th, I'm changing my last name, so I just didn't want to shock anybody at the board.
Garfunkel, is that what you're going to go with?
Pretty
or-
much, yeah.
Changing it to Smith?
There you go.
Great. That's how rumors get started, Kurt.
There you go.
That's it.
Anything we forgot? Anything we neglected? All right, no lights. We'll go ahead and adjourn at 6:10 on the dot. Thank you all so much.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.